Howdy. Well, we're ready to start a new watercolor today. I've got a nice sheet of fresh white watercolor paper ready to go. Nothing on it, totally clean, totally ready to absorb. Today I've got this picture here that I took a few years ago when I went to Pawleys Island, South Carolina. Some of these beach houses are from several hundred years ago, even back to slavery days. I didn't know people went to the beach in those days. I don't know if they had swimming suits or they just sat in the sand. I don't know. But I took this picture at sunset, which is my favorite time because of the long shadows and the warm evening colors. I love the yellow theme in this. I love all the warmth, and I like the old memory feel to this. The very informal and rustic back deck there. I can just feel my feet walking barefoot on that deck back there. I can feel the breeze of the ocean and the salt marsh coming through. So I'm really excited to get started on this one and see how well I can do here. So let's get started. I projected the salt marsh house onto the paper to get ready for this watercolor. This is the one we're working from. It's going to be a yellow theme painting. Golden yellow grasses, buttery yellow house, even yellow in the sky. Look at this dock. I didn't even notice that till I started studying this picture. That dock behind the house that goes out, it would go into the salt marsh. That looks like so much fun. Go out there and sit on the hot dock, maybe fish or crab. I'd love to be baking in there, maybe make a pie for the weekend. I did decide I'm not going to do this breeze wall under here. I like to open it up and have my nice pilings under the house. There's that dock that I didn't even notice when I took the photograph. One thing I'm doing different, I'm going to open up the salt marsh and put the ocean back here. See, a little bit of ocean showing. So we get some salt marsh and ocean with these beautiful cedar trees. There'll be a nice olive green. And we have the shower head to wash off your feet before you go in. A Martin house. And I was noticing one thing I really like is how crooked the railing was on that old house as it settles into the salt marsh back there. Have another interesting feature here, the water hose under the house. Little chair sitting there, and maybe some tomatoes in the window. Next week, I'll begin to watercolor it. I found a little bit of time today before I go home to get some color into this new watercolor. There's what we're working from there. I am not going to use the sepia method that I used the last 2 or 3 watercolors because I wasn't able to get enough clean color. So I'm just gonna go straight onto the white paper and work each area. I'm liking that light yellow sky. Ocean was simple, already put in. I couldn't help but get started on some of these beautiful cedar trees. I love those colors. Well, it's another Saturday, watercolor day. This is the photo of the little house in the salt marsh that I am working on. Got quite a bit done today. Today's the 8th day of a fast that I've been on, so I got low energy and had to take a nap. Let me see, got that yellow sky going. I can see on my monitor here, it's looking more like flesh color, but it's a beautiful yellow in reality. You know, I always have to put a rusty tin roof on my houses. I think that the salt marsh going out to the ocean came out really beautiful. I loved doing this little tree back here in a kind of a hazy blue-gray color. That happens in the distance, that colors turn into a lavender or a blue color in the background. You can see it just a little bit right there behind those trees. And then I always love my cedar trees that have so much orange and gold in them other than just green. And I think this little patch of green in the marsh is very exciting and interesting and inviting back there. You can maybe you can see there's a little bit of green back here. And here's some bushes in the foreground where the light is hitting them. There we go, right there. Right here, these weeds on the other side of the walkway. I did an interesting technique where I wet them down and then scraped them with a dry bristle brush to get some grasses highlight. See, you can see the highlights in those grasses I was trying to duplicate. Now, working with these grasses in the foreground was a deal. What I did was I masked off the top part of the watercolor and taped it off, and then did all kinds of golds and reds and oranges for the grasses down here. That was kind of scary for me because I've never done anything that crazy, but that's how they look up there. Now, that straight line will go away, as you see, when I put the dark bushes behind them. There we go. I'm enjoying this one. So I guess we'll look at it again next Saturday. It's Saturday today, another day for me to enjoy watercolors all day long. I'm getting ready to work on this yellow house back here. What will I do today? A couple of things. The last few videos I worked with a sepia undertone so that I could establish my tones from light to middle to dark tone and then put color on top of that. The problem I found out was that it made my colors look a little bit too muddy. It was a good tool for establishing the tones, and it works really good for oil painting, but it's not working so well for watercolor. So I'm not doing that with this one, but I still really like to have a strong composition for tone between light, medium, and dark tones. So I'm trusting the photograph that I'm working from to help me do that. And I will adjust. Like if I notice one color is not dark enough, I can always put more layers on top of it toward the end of the painting. Okay, so the second kind of rule that I'm going by to help me decide what to work on today is that it makes a lot of sense sometimes to work from the far background into the foreground. Another thing that can make sense sometimes is to work from the top down to the bottom. That's because if you spill or drip paint as you work from the top to the bottom, then as you get to the bottom, you can cover up what it is you spilled, especially in oil painting, not so much in watercolor since it's transparent. So getting back to the idea of working from the background to the foreground, how to explain why that's a good idea. The foreground is usually your focal point, and so the background usually is not. So when you paint the foreground after you have finished your background, then the shape of this roof line, the edges of the building conform very crisp and sharp to the foreground image, which is the subject that we want to focus on. If we did it the other way around, if we did the foreground first and worked toward the background, then the shape of the background would start to dominate and might cross over on the shape of the foreground and mess up your subject, which is what your eye is going to be focusing on. So today, I guess I'm going to be doing the house. I'm going to do everything under the house probably next week. The house is yellow from the photograph that we're working from up here. And I'm noticing this is turning out to be a yellow themed painting. We have basically 3 different areas of yellow. The background is a light pastel baby yellow. The house is going to be more of a, what would you say? It's going to be a more medium creamy yellow, not as light and pastel as the sky. And then more like a butter yellow. Then we've got the golden grass down here, which is a shade of yellow. So we've got at least 3 different shades of yellow going on. So it's going to be a yellow themed watercolor. All right, I'll check in with you again at the end of the day so we can see what I accomplished and how I did with what I planned to do. See you then. Well, I have finished another Saturday of work on this watercolor, and the only work that I did was on the siding of the house and the windows, and that took all day. I am a little bit frustrated. This camera is not showing how colorful the siding is on that house. It looks kind of gray in this camera monitor. In reality, it's much more alive and vibrant and golden, but it still looks a little bit too much like ivory. I still want it to look more yellow. Even the sky in this camera does not look yellow. I hate that. I wish I could show the true color in this camera. Anyway, I'm going to need to satisfy me, put a little bit more yellow in this siding. I'm really happy with the gold shadows that I made under the roof. And you can see in the photograph how it's kind of a red glow up there. That happens when the light bounces off of this golden grass, and then the light from that bounces up underneath the roof and then is reflected down on the wall of the house. I did something that I changed in this picture. I let the rafters show because I think they're more interesting, and they were quite common in the time when this building was built, and I really like the look that it gives to the shadow. But on this house, it looks like someone put a gutter there, and then over here there's no gutter, but see how there's that fascia board that covers up the rafters. I don't think that's as pretty to paint. I like to put color in the windows because, as you see in the actual photograph, they can be kind of boring, just black or charcoal look. And sometimes you can see at sunset, the actual light of the sunset will reflect on the glass or the screen on the windows. And they make a much more interesting picture. Now this teal green window I'm not comfortable with. It kind of looks like somebody's watching that television in that room. That color isn't sitting well with me, and I don't know what color I want it to be. If I put more of lean it towards blue, it's really going to stick out too much like a sore thumb. I'm thinking I might put some of this gold over it, which will make it more of an olive. So we'll see next time on that one. Then the other thing is the screens here. The screens, there's not too much color in them. A little bit. In this monitor, they're looking a little bit purple back there, but a little bit of light is showing through them. And I've often noticed that screens at sunset will have a golden bronze look. So I'm starting out with that to play around with, and it will get darker. And then over here, I noticed it was almost a kind of a red. I did put a little bit more red up in here, that I noticed in the photograph. I really like that little bit of color up in the peak of each one. And then on the shadow of the roof, right there, I noticed that it seemed to be kind of purple up in there and leaning towards a blue. If you'll see that little bit of purple and blue up there. Whenever I see a little bit of color, like in that kitchen window right there, even though it's charcoal and gray, if I see the tiniest little bit of color there in this window here, and in this one, that's where I got my little notion to go the teal shade. I take that color and I run with it and bump it up really high to make it a more interesting picture than just a black window. Next week, I guess I'm going to be doing mostly finishing up the screens on the deck, that screened-in porch, and then the white railing that you see there. That's mostly what I'll be doing next week. And then the following week, I'll be doing all the under the house there, under the pilings. And then finally, at the very end, we'll shape up these grasses in the foreground. Here we go. It is Saturday, watercolor day again. Here we are back with the yellow house under a yellow sky in a yellow salt marsh. What will we be doing today? I'm not happy with the color of the house. It looks kind of creamy ivory color on my camera monitor, but this is supposed to be a yellow house, so I'm going to try to glaze a little bit more yellow. I don't know how I'm going to manage that. I'm noticing in this photograph here, the siding looks like a cold yellow. How in the world am I going to make my yellow cold and still be yellow and not gray? So I'm going to try yellow glaze on that. We'll see how it works out. There's all the trim around the deck and the screened-in porch that needs to be colored in. It's white in reality, but on the photograph you can see it'll be a little bit bluish tone. And then we've got that screened-in porch there that I want to do today. But I don't like how dark it is here. I want more sunlight to show through, and I would like for this ocean to show through here. That would be fun. So I'm going to try to open that up. I'm doing it right now with a amber glaze here and kind of a reddish over here on this end where it's reflecting the sunset. And how is that going to work with a yellow house? And we've got all that yellow going on there. I don't know. We will find out. That'll be a lot to get done today. And I doubt that I'll get to any of the underpainting under the house under there. We might get that far. We'll see. Now, filling in those shrubs and the foreground grasses, that might happen today because that is pretty simple. I've done lots of bushes. I'm accomplished at that, so if I find time, that might happen, especially because it's an easy thing to do. I'll check in with you again at the end of the day, and we'll see what progress was made and how I handled those screens on the screened-in porch. Just finished another day of watercoloring on the little yellow house in the yellow salt marsh. I am so happy with how this screen porch came out. I did not have that in mind. I had no idea it would evolve that way. Let me back up a minute and say I did put more yellow on the siding of the house, and I'm happy about that. It doesn't show up on this camera screen here. I don't know what you're going to see online, but in original, the house is yellow now. But I just had no idea the screen porch would light up like a little lantern. I wanted to make the ocean and the salt marsh behind the screen more visible than what you can see here in the original photo. And I thought I was going to put a purple glaze over the screens to darken them, but I ended up not doing that. I really like the colors. what has happened now is that the screened-in porch has become the focal point, and I really didn't have this planned. What will make a focal point is dramatic color, especially yellow and red, and also detail will create a focal point, and having it near the center of the painting. All those, I really highlighted the orange underneath the awning above the kitchen window. Put an amber color over the screens there and vermilion over the screens out here, and really did bump up the vermilion up in those eaves, which is where the light reflects off of this grass down here, which is golden. And plus the sunset light will make that turn a reddish orange vermilion color. And this camera, I'm really not seeing the transparent colors that I'm talking to you about right now. So I'm pretty much finished with everything above the deck of this house. I've begun starting on the stairs, and next Saturday we'll work on what goes under the house here. What else do I want to say? I still don't know what's going to happen with this aqua colored window. I'll wait until the painting is finished. Maybe by then I'll like it. Things change when you add and subtract to other parts of the painting. I did put a golden glaze over it, which I think helped it. It still might be sticking out too aqua to me and drawing too much attention to itself over there. What else can I talk about? I guess that's about it. I really do like the way the blue shading on the white trim work of this house. Like, look at that screen door where there's blue shadow at the top and some down at the deck. And you see the blue shading around those windows up where it's dark at the top. I'm very, very happy with adding some of that cool blue. It just adds another dimension to all the warmth. And I love the pink that came out in that screen window. And then the lavender inside the framework on the far side of the screen, that we can see through the screens and see that framework on the back side. I used a lavender because I could barely see little bits of it up there. If you'll see through the screen into the white deck on the other side of the screen, it does have kind of a purpley lavender magenta cast to it. All right, there we go. That's the work for today. I'll see you next Saturday, and we'll probably be working on what happens underneath that house. Well, it's Saturday again, and time to watercolor. It's a beautiful rainy day outside. It's a great day to be inside doing a watercolor. And tell you what we're getting ready to do today. And then at the end of the day, I will show you what we've got done. I've had this watercolor up on my easel all week, looking at it and thinking about some things that I might want to do. And I have some surprising ideas that I got really excited about. You see the screens here on the screened-in porch here. I had a light glaze of gold over them that makes them darker than the sky to show that there was like some old rusty screens there, but you can still see through them. And I've been very much in love with the colors of this watercolor. I'm thinking this is going to be one of my favorites I've ever done. This screened-in room came out much more exciting and colorful than I imagined. This is the original I'm working from, and you can see the dark screened-in porch here. But I had noticed that you can barely see through it a little bit, so I wanted to enhance that. But here is the exciting idea I'm having for today. I would like to make these screens just a little bit darker so that you can really tell it is screens and you're not just seeing right through to the sky. I'm scared to death to do that because I'm so happy with it right now that I might feel like I've destroyed this beautiful painting. And when you put watercolor down, you can't change it. It's there. You can't take the color away. So you can't paint over it because it's transparent. So it may seem crazy to say this because watercolors look so peaceful and elegant and sublime, but they're scary as hell. You can ruin them at any minute. And the other exciting thing that occurred to me is that I thought I would put some old streaks of rust on the screens. And this is really going to be tricky. See how I've got the rust on the tin roof up here? I do that by having the entire roof wet, and then I drop in little bits of rust color on it, and I turn the painting at an angle like this, like that on the board, and the rust runs straight down, but it ends up being that it follows the line of the roof. So I'm thinking about doing the same thing in these screens here, just a little bit, maybe a little bit of more of a reddish rust in the screened-in door and a golden rust on a screened-in window. And I'm very excited. I think I would love the way it's going to look, but again, I could make a horrible mess out of it. The other thing I'm going to do today is try to get to the under story of this house. From the original photo, this part is open, but this part over here has been closed in. I want to make it all open because I like to see through it under there. I think it's more interesting. And you can see the pilings that are going to be down there. And what I'm really planning on doing is, you see all this color we got going up here in the daylight sky area? Or down here underneath it's going to be dark, but I still want to do lots of different shades and colors of dark. You know, down here where it's moldy and musty on the pilings underneath there where it's damp and dark, there still can be all different colors. Green mold on the wood, blue mold, a reddish rust, all kinds of colors going on. So it's still going to be colorful if I can get it done, but it's going to be darker to look like it's in the shadows. And maybe we'll have something to look at later today and see how successful I was. So I'll check with you at the end of the day, see what we have done. Well, I wanted to let you guys see halfway between finished and not finished on these screens. I was just talking about how I was going to make this area more gold. I did this one window section here, and I have the rust running down, bleeding. I have not yet done this window here or these above the screen door. It feels like a little bit of a killjoy to me. My heart was so happy with the light yellow back there. It seemed so bright and light and happy, and my heart felt lighter. I feel a little bit heavier feeling here now, but maybe it needed to be done to indicate that it really is a screen. Now that I'm looking at it more, this yellow is darker than the sky, so maybe I didn't need to do that. We'll see how I feel when I'm gonna get these two and then those two little windows up there in the screens, and then put another rust streak in the door. We'll see what we get when it's finished. Well, I made a little bit of progress on this painting before I wasn't feeling well and had to stop for the day. But you can see I did put a darker glaze over the screens so that you can tell for sure that there are screens here. You're not just looking straight through to the sky. And there's the little rust that I said I wanted to add, the little streaks of rust on the screens. It did add a new color of yellow to the painting. So now we have this very pale, soft butter yellow sky, deeper yellow on the house, this golden yellow in the screens, and then a very deep golden yellow in the grass. Also got to painting some of the pilings underneath, enjoying experimenting with all kinds of different colors, and this nice little white railing fence that they have at the bottom. See all the different shades of color that you can see in a white rail. So next Saturday, we will get back to finishing pilings and the grass is underneath the house. Oh, colored in the little chair. It's looking kind of dark green right now. It'll probably need another coat because I want it to be black. It's Saturday again, another watercolor day. Let's look at what I plan to do today. It's possible this painting might get finished today. So the main thing is the underpinning under this house. I'm thinking I might even add some more pilings. I love those things. And I would like to make maybe a couple of crooked ones. Now I'm wanting it to look really dark and mysterious down here, but I'm also noticing, see, here's the dock, and part of it runs underneath the house here. And then there's all that light grass out there for the salt marsh, and it's probably gonna end up showing also. I'm moving away from the real photo up here where they closed in the under part of their house down there with a breeze wall. They do that here at the beach where a hurricane can wash the ocean water through there without flooding a living area of the house. There's cracks between the boards where the ocean can get through. We call a breeze wall. Sometimes you can park your vehicles under there and your boats and things, but it's not a room that could get damaged by water damage from the flood. And I like all that dark look under there to oppose this light look of the house above. But I don't know what's going to happen with mine, how that's going to look if the salt marsh is showing through. I don't know how I'm going to get the darkness that I like, but we'll see. Another thing to work on is this window here. I'm not really happy with that color sticking out like a sore thumb there. But you never know, when the whole painting is done, maybe it won't look so bad. And then I might make the decision then. Colors can change when you have other things around them going on. Then your feeling about whatever that color is or the darkness or light might change. If I change it, I'm thinking I might scrub out some of this color, try to lift some out, although mostly it does stain the paper. And then I'm thinking about putting some of this gold tone in there. In these windows, I have a lot of purple and red and orange going on, which is reflecting the sunlight. So it might be interesting to have gold in this window. Not red, because it would take too much attention to itself, and I think the focal point needs to stay here. And the reason the focal point needs to stay here, well, number one, you need a focal point. You don't want them all over the place. And we've already got all this detail, which creates a focal point. We've got red, which creates a focal point. We've got the fact that it's in the center of the painting, which creates a focal point. So red over here would probably be distracting. We need to start calming our colors down the further we get away from the center of the painting. Now, that's a general rule. All the rules can be broken. And if you're a good artist, there's ways to break rules and do really crazy things that normally wouldn't work. But you're clever enough, you know how to balance it out with other things. And also, once we get all these bushes in down here, that'll give us the shape of those grasses. So it won't be a straight line down there. It'll be a fuzzy line of all these salt marsh grasses. All right, so I'll work on it today for a few hours and see what we have at the end of the day. It is the end of another painting day. Let's look at what got done today. Did get that little chair a little bit blacker. Got a lot of work done underneath the pilings here. Darkened in under the piling here. Remember, I was concerned this morning about how all the light was going to show under the pilings, and I wanted it dark. I figured out how to do that by putting a bunch of trees and bushes on the other side. Only thing I don't like about that right now, it's too green for me. I need to dull that somehow. It's just too bright of a green. I've got all my nice olive greens going on and all my other trees around here. But I thought I would do this in blue to make it look more shady. And after a week of living with that, before next Saturday's painting day, I might decide I like it. It does look cold and cool and dark down there, but I don't know because the rest of this painting is so warm. I ended up with a little bit of lawn over here for the kids to play in. Reminds me of when I was a kid playing with my brothers and sisters. We'd go visit somebody in a nice place out in the country and have some green lawn to play in. I didn't know I was going to do that. I had to fill it in with something. Some way, somehow, the salt marsh needs to reach land and the lawns somewhere. What else got done? Worked on the dock quite a bit. I got lots of little pilings down there. I love to make them crooked and old looking. And I tried to use different colors. They got brown, blue, teal, purple, but I think they're going to need to be a little bit darker. See, they're in the shadow underneath that dock. They're going to need to be darker. I'll use the same colors, but darken it. And then I got a little tiny little bit of yellow on the highlight on the walkway of that dock where you walk. What else? I think all the grass in the foreground has been defined by all the little shrubs and bushes that I put on the other side. So I got rid of that straight line and we've got little hills and valleys. Still haven't worked on that window yet, but I'm feeling more and more inclined that it's going to be more golden looking. I'm not inclined to go blue with that. And I guess that's all to talk about right now. I am going to work on that dock some more next week, and I'm going to decide whether or not I like that bluish cast in that forest back there under the house. I did keep the pilings very colorful, like I like to do these days. Make them interesting. Maybe a little bit too colorful, might shade them down a little bit more. But I did make them dark, so they're hidden underneath the bottom of the house from the sun. All right, there it is. We'll see it next Saturday. It is watercolor day again with this yellow house in the salt marsh. So few things left to do, it's possible these could all be gotten done in one day here. I like to make notes of what I plan to do. I think artists sometimes have a tendency to just jump in the middle of a painting and mess around. And I like to have notes to keep it very structural and organized and know exactly what my plan is, instead of just kind of messing and pushing paint around. It's like building a house. So I've made notes that you can see here. Made these notes, I actually made them a week ago, so I'm going to try to remember what they were all about. The first note says I want to darken the shrubs. I'm talking about those shrubs underneath the house here. And I'm not sure if I need to darken them or lighten them. I'm not happy with the darkness of those shrubs on the far side of the house and the darkness of the pilings under the house. I know I want darkness, but I don't know if I want the bushes to be dark. And I've been looking at this for a week and I really can't figure out what it is I want. So the only way I know, and the best way that I know how to figure that out and know what to do next, is to take a photograph of this in its current condition, put it through Adobe Photoshop computer graphics, and then the first thing I want to do is take each one of these areas where we can see the shrubs on the other side of that house, and I want to lighten them and see if that does what I want it to do. And I'm also thinking I might want to take some of the highlights out of some of these pilings. It's nice that the sunset hits them in that nice warm sunset color, but they are attracting a lot of attention to an area that doesn't need so much attention. All right, next thing on the list is to darken that little water hose down there. It's just too bright green for me, and it's looking like a bullseye down there. It's attracting more attention than I want. So I'm thinking if I darken it, dull it, take some of that green out, by putting it more in the shade, it might attract a little bit less attention. I love it. I like to show things that look utilitarian and look functional, and show that there's a handyman home who's taking care of things. I love that kind of thing. Some of my watercolors have utility poles and electrical wires and plumbing pipes. And which reminds me, I haven't added plumbing pipes here yet. I need to put that on the list before I forget. I love those. All right, next thing, I want to maybe make this window more golden. I'm just not happy with that greenness, that aqua color in the window. It's not horrible, but it's attracting more attention to my eye than I think it deserves. It's stealing my eye away from the focal point and making me look over here a little bit too much. I'm being real picky about that, but I'm thinking I'm going to want to make it more of a golden color, which probably means instead of just putting color on top of color and getting darker and darker, I'm going to have to tape this off with masking tape. And maybe even this one too, where the nice window blinds are. Scrub it down with a cloth and water and rub as much color out as possible. Dry it off, remove the tape, and go back in with a gold color. All right, next on the list, darkening this dock, especially the pilings under the dock. There's really pretty colored pilings, but they need to be darker. They would be in nature. In real life, like you can see in the photograph up here, the pilings need to be darker. And the top of that deck, I think, needs to be a little bit darker. It's reflecting the sunlight from the sky above, since the top of the deck faces up. But I think it could use a little bit more deeper tone. I'm thinking maybe into the yellows, yellow reflection of the sunlight. Let's see. Then I've got one more note up there that says landing definition. What the hell did I mean when I wrote that? I don't have the first clue. A landing is usually a dock or a place where a boat lands, or it could mean the land, the earth. I do not know what in the hell I meant, but it was important enough at one point last week to write it down. One thing that's possible, this area in here, it could possibly need some more definition between this being the lawn and this being a row of shrubs next to the salt marsh, kind of like a border on their property. Maybe that's what I meant, that I need more definition down there, which would probably mean darkening it and then lighten it up. Usually the further away the land is, the lighter it is, and the closer it is, the darker. So maybe go from dark to light right there. I'm not sure what that meant. But one thing I do need to do quite quickly before I forget is to write down that I want to add some plumbing pipes at the end. All right, next thing you're going to see me do is take a photograph of this painting as it now is into the Photoshop program and figure out what we're going to do about this area over here. What's going to be darker and what's going to be lighter. So we'll check on that in just a minute. I just this minute figured out what I meant when I wrote down more definition in the landing. This is the landing right here. It's where the stairs go up and then you land before you go on into the deck. So I'm thinking all these white boards don't have enough definition in them to show a little bit more shape. So one thing I might do to do that is maybe put a little bit more shading in the connection between the boards, maybe a little bit more shading underneath that lip of that step, and right here between the board, the vertical lumber and the horizontal lumber, maybe a little bit of shading in there. Give it a little bit of definition. Well, figure that out. All right, see you soon. Okay, we have the watercolor of the yellow salt marsh house in Photoshop, and we're trying to figure out about this area down here where I'm showing my arrow underneath the house, the bushes on the far side of those pylons. I was thinking maybe they need to be lighter because everything on that side is hitting sunlight, and maybe it'll make the pilings look darker and give me that dark look I want. So the first thing I did was make them more yellow, which makes them a little bit lighter, but more yellow. See, blue and purple are usually shadow colors. That's why I did them kind of blue and dark, but my first notion was to make them more yellow. So we'll see. There it is. And I can tell you I'm happier with that already. Next we can see if we can make them brighter. Would that help? Let's try a little bit brighter. I don't know. That's too bright. That's a little bit brighter. Do we like that? Or let's undo it. Too bad that panel gets in the view. There. That. Or that. That. All right. Now we made the shrubs lighter, and now I've made them even lighter still, and I'm very torn, but I think this is the one I'm going to like. We'll see them darker. See, they're not as dark as they originally were, but they're a little bit darker. They're like we were just recently, and here's even lighter. I think even lighter makes more sense because it's more the same color as the salt marsh. It makes more sense. It draws more attention to the eye. It makes your focal point become the larger painting instead of just that screened-in porch. I'm very torn. You know, I often like to make the edges and corners of the painting darker so that your eye doesn't go there so much. I'm very torn. I'm going to have to think about this one. Now we've got these light white pilings in the front. Maybe I would like them to be a little bit darker. We'll check on that next. Okay, here we are. We've got the bushes on the far side of the house much, much brighter. So that would be the natural way they would be, as bright as the salt marsh. Now, see those white pilings in the foreground underneath the house? I'm thinking about making them darker. So here we go. There they are, darker. Lighter, darker. Now, the part of me that likes bright white pilings likes that. All the trim on the house is nice and bright and white. But there's something to be said for the darker pilings. They recede from view, so they're not so attracting so much attention, which I'm happy about. And I kind of like that blue shading on there because it shows the cool, cold side of the building on the opposite side of the sunlight. And you know how it gets cooler in the evenings when the sun goes down and there's a coolness on your back when there's not so much sunlight. So there's a lot to be said about those darker pilings and being in blue. I think we're probably going to go with shading them a bit. Now, are we really going to keep that light background there with the bushes? It's really an interesting question. There they really do disappear on you. Here they come to life. They show the nice shape of all those dark pilings under the house. When they're lighter, there's more contrast. I kind of think my heart is going towards that one. Next, let's look at the window on the far left. Let's look at the color of that window and think about changing it to a more of a gold color and less of that turquoise. Now I'm going to show you what I've been playing with on the window. That far left window, I've been commenting for several weeks. I'm not sure I like the teal color of that window, and I'm thinking I want to change it to more of a gold color, where the sunlight of the afternoon is reflecting the sun glow and all the yellow and gold from that grass. So I thought maybe I would be happy with that, and the fact that this is a yellow themed painting. So let's check it out. Here it is. I think I'm happier. It seems to sing now. It's sitting there comfortably. It actually is a little bit livelier, but it's more in the same melody as the rest of the painting. It's kind of a dead note here, or an off note, and it's ringing really loud, and it's attracting too much attention, and it's not looking happy to me. I don't know what other words, adjectives to use, but I like it gold. Looks like someone turned the light on in the room. They just walked in and turned the light on in the bedroom. Yes, I'm quite happy with that. So we did quite a few things. We decided the pilings will be a little bit darker, make it more like a cool evening, add some cool blue to the house. The bushes we made much brighter on the far side of the house. Here they are very bright, here they are somewhat bright, and there they were dark. No, not into that. Okay, a little bit of brighter and very bright. I think that's what we need. I think everything looks perfect for me now. So now I can apply it to the actual painting. Think how lucky I am that I was able to do this in Photoshop. You can't do this with a watercolor. You change the colors around that much and you're going to tear up the paper, you're going to have holes in it, you're going to have nasty colors of mud. It just can't be done. So I don't know what people did before computer graphics. I think this painting might be finished, but I always leave a painting out for a week or two where I can view it and make sure I like everything about it. As a reminder, this is the photograph we worked from, and I'll go over what I did today to finish it up. Let's see. The pilings, the white pilings on the left side under the house, I darkened them, made them a little bit bluer so that they can not stick out so much and show some nice, cool evening blue color that happens when the sun starts to go down. The shrubs underneath the house to the left, I lightened them and made them more green and less blue. That window on the far left, that was driving me crazy because it was teal colored. I made it a gold to reflect the light coming in off of the salt marsh and the sunset. See what a pretty color of gold, and a little bit of play of vermilion on that window blind. See, there's the lighter green underneath the house there. What else? We darkened the dock. The pilings under the dock are darker now, so they should be darker underneath that deck. And I even darkened the top of the deck. It was too white, so I put some orange and yellow on that. Let me see. Tried to darken that chair some more. I'm trying to get that chair to be black. It's still looking green. I mean, driving me crazy. Darkened the hose underneath the house. They were too green. Added my little plumbing pipes. I always like to have those. So I've even signed it at this point, but I'll live with it for a week or two out where I can see it and make sure I'm really happy with it. All right, here we go. Yellow house in Salt Marsh on the edge of the ocean. Well, it's Saturday, watercolor day. I thought last week that this painting might be finished. I even signed it, but I do like to leave them out for a few weeks where I can look at them as I go through my week and see if there's anything else that I feel needs to be modified. And sure enough, I did find 3 things I want to change or embellished. One thing I want to do underneath the house, these pilings, I want to make them darker. I think that would be very satisfying. See, this one's very dark. And these out front, I'll leave light because they're out in the sunlight. But these back here, I think if they're darker, they'll be more interesting and mysterious up in that dark area under the house. And it will also make those shrubs on the other side of the house look more sunny. So you can see from the original photograph, underneath the house here, I added pilings and replaced that breeze wall with pilings. But underneath the house, you can see how dark and mysterious it is down there. And it's nice to have some dark, mysterious areas in the painting. See how dark the shadow is on the roof here. And it makes the sun look brighter. All right, the other thing is the pilings on the deck. I think they definitely need to be darker. They're very pale and weak. I love that little dock out there, and I think it needs to be darker. You can see in the photograph up there, the little bit of pilings underneath it are darker. I don't know what I'm gonna do with the top of this deck. It's very light right now. I don't know if I want to darken it or if it'll look nice, light as it is, once I darken the pilings. In the photograph, it shows up quite bright and light where it's reflecting all the sunlight from the sky. I think after I darken the pilings, then I'll know if I like the light on top of the deck or not. If I still can't decide, I may take a photograph of this watercolor, put it in Photoshop, and play around, see if it looks better or darker. All right, the third thing I've noticed, you may not be able to tell very well from this video because this camera unfortunately isn't as good with color as I wish it was. But I worked last week with this image in Photoshop, and I noticed that if this house looked like a darker shade of yellow, then it made the sky look much lighter and brighter. In my camera, as I'm looking at that sky, it looks like a dull ivory. But with my eyes looking on the actual painting here in front of me, it's a light lemony yellow, a much, much prettier yellow. But anyway, I'm scared to mess with the color of this house. I'm really, really scared to mess with it. I love it, but right now it barely looks any darker than the sky. And when it is darker on the house, as it was in the Photoshop photograph, it really looked nice. It made the sky very bright and strong contrast, and it put the side of that house a little bit darker in shadow. We will connect at the end of this day and see what these modifications look like at that point. I'll talk to you later. I think we are finally finished this time. I just completed what we spoke about last time. I darkened the pilings under the house. I darkened the dock. I even darkened the surface of the dock, but I went back with a little X-Acto knife. This one here. Where is it? There. And I scratched out some of the color off the paper so it gives it kind of a little glistening light in the sunlight. And I was brave and put another coat of yellow on the house. That yellow had a tiny bit of red and blue in it to tone it down and not to be too crazy yellow. But now it's a darker shade of yellow than the sky. All right, thanks for watching. I think this is probably my favorite watercolor I've ever done.